right? Like, I think that's a corporate thing. Like big corporations, that's how you do it.
I worked a lot of nights on it and just kind of...
Some people's careers or businesses are getting started.
It got to be a little bit too much. And that's when I started to see that freedom drain off.
You're listening to the Roofing Success Podcast, a show created to inspire roofing contractors to achieve optimal success in their roofing businesses. I'm the host, Jim Aline, the co-author of the books Internet Marketing for Roofing Contractors and The Best Known Roofer. I'm also the co-founder of Roofer Marketers, the leading digital marketing agency for the roofing industry. On each episode, I sit down with industry leaders to talk about their processes, the lessons they've learned, and how to find success in roofing. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. Probably sick of hearing me say it, but press those buttons, subscribe, like, comment, all of that type of thing. If you want to take the conversation beyond what you're just listening to here, go to Facebook, type in Roofing Success and join the Roofing Success Facebook group. Today we have, what would you be, the New England zone, Ryan McCaslin from the great state of Maine. How are you today, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, man. Awesome. Yeah. So Ryan, you work with James and Whitney Company Roofing, and what's your position over there?
I am the general manager, so I oversee everything in the exteriors division.
Cool, man. And wanted to talk to you. You've been really good at getting things organized over there, getting the processes in place, getting that set up. We'll have a lot of that conversation today, but let's take it a step back and talk about, how'd you get in this business, man?
Yeah, that's what everybody wants to know. How'd you go from, going to a business school to kind of finding your way into roofing? Kind of an interesting journey. I've been in sales my whole career. I went to college, took night courses while working a sales job, found my way slowly into equipment sales. I worked for a John Deere dealership. I sold compact construction equipment. As I kind of worked through that, I really got sick of the corporate, the corporate lifestyle, if you will, and being stuck in a dealership. So a good friend of mine, Eric James, he's half owner of James and Whitney. Him and his partner, Steve Whitney, reached out to me, and they knew I was at the same time starting a spec home building business of my own. And they kind of approached me with the idea of more freedom. So, this was something that I could do while building my own business. They said, why don't you come sell roofs for us? And I didn't know that selling roofs was even a career choice. But after some discussions and persuasion, I did some research, a lot of it listening to this podcast, and I learned a lot about roofing and roofing sales in the industry. And I said, this seems like a fun gig. So I made the jump.
That's awesome. And I've started to kind of, it's a weird evolution of the podcast, right? Like I've been doing this since October of 2019 now. And it's a weird thing to me that like some people's careers or businesses are getting started, kind of listening to this podcast and then, and finding success. And it's so cool to me. It's such a cool thing that happens. And so as you were looking at the roofing business and thinking, man, should I do this? That the spec home building business was really the end goal, right?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people that get into roofing, they have an entrepreneurial spirit. They're trying to get into something that gives them freedom, right? At the end of the day, like the way I looked at the business at the time was I couldn't run that in that dealership atmosphere. And I kind of was looking at that as more of like my retirement package, if you will. And, after talking to Steve and Eric, the owners of James and Whitney, we went through the whole line as to, what is out there for possibility as far as, what you can do for revenue, your time off, and all those things really started to appeal to me. And, it kind of made that decision easy at that point, right? Because you can see a path to success there. Yeah. And I think that's the reason a lot of people get into this industry.
And the freedom aspect of it, along with that path to success, right? There is a certain freedom about being a salesperson in this industry, right? Like you're running around. There's some time, right? There's some time that you could maybe insert these other things. What changed? Or are you still pursuing that goal? Like what changed for you?
Well, as we kind of started to restructure the business and come out with more processes, I started off in sales, and then I was the sales manager because when I came here, I took a lot of that corporate with me, right? I took a lot of the good corporate stuff and brought it along with me, which is the organization, the processes. And I just saw so many areas that we could improve on in order to scale. So I worked a lot of nights on it and just kind of came up with a plan. And I went to the owners with that plan. And I just, instead of just talking about it and saying, hey guys, this is what I can do for you, I just showed them on paper, this is where we can be if we follow this plan. So sales manager, that was 2 years ago. This last year, just due to our scaling, we hired a production manager and a sales manager. And then I went up to GM, which I was wearing all three of those hats at once. And it got to be a little bit too much. And that's when I started to see that freedom drain off.
The freedom declining. Yeah. That's interesting. There's a quote, I'm sure, about it, or if that you do the job that you want, not the job that you have, to a point, right? It sounds like you did that.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to talk about it, but if you can show, like, I believe what you can show me, whether it's on paper, come up with a presentation. I always tell my guys that, like, hey, you got an idea? That's great. Love to hear it. I love entertaining ideas, but please show me on paper. Like, show me why this is something that's advantageous to our company. And if they can do that, we'll go with it every time.
Yeah. That's a corporate thing, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think that's a corporate thing. Like, big corporations, that's how you do it. You make presentations about your operational plan for the quarter, and you're this and you're that, right? So we talked a little bit about that. Like, there were these things from corporate America that, John Deere's a multi-billion dollar company, international, like, layers of management upon management and executives upon executives, right? What were some of those things that you learned over there that were easily implementable, if that's a good word for it, right? Like in the small roofing company or small business, I guess, that you entered?
Yeah. I don't know how easy it was, but just getting organized in general. That's my number one thing is, if you want to scale, you got to be organized. You got to know your numbers. You got to know your revenue. You have to know, roughly based off that revenue, what you're going to take in, how many positions you can sustain at that number. You just have to get organized. Big help for us in that organization has been just doing the research, finding the right programs that allow us to get organized, whether it's CRM, quoting software. All of those things allow you to get organized because you're spending less time behind a computer, more time in the field, which, then you start to scale.
So what I'm hearing is using tech to organize.
Yes,
in a lot of ways, right? What are, you talked about some numbers, different things. You threw out a bunch of different things that you could get organized around. Let's dive into those. Let's start with, like, the beginning of the customer journey, right? There's, you know, they become aware of you. They start making those phone calls. They're trying to get an inspection or an estimate. You know, what are the things that you organize through that customer journey along the way, starting with that first initial contact? How do you guys deal with that?
Yeah. So, I think the number one focus to any company that's going to grow in this industry is really the customer journey and experience. If that's your main focus, the rest of the stuff kind of falls into place. So whenever we get a lead in, sales manager, you know, within 24 hours, no questions asked, we have a rep with a scheduled site visit. So we're going out there, we're scheduling that within 24 hours. And most of the time, we're putting boots on the ground within 24 hours on that site.
Not calling them. Wait, not calling them back in 24 hours? You actually. Well, sorry, that's my little jab at people.
Yeah, so we call them back immediately. Most of the time, it's within an hour.
Yeah.
They'll be in touch with an exterior rep, and then we expect that site visit to happen, or at least be scheduled in 24 hours. Obviously, you got to work around people's schedule. Sure. So organizing that process, and then how that communication works all the way through the sales process and into production is critical. You know, we have a CRM that sends automatic emails out to clients to let them know, hey, you're at this stage in your process. The next stage or the next thing you can expect is contact by. And we have a production coordinator in our office who reaches out, schedules their job. So everything from that, starting from that site visit all the way through to the start of production is all, you know, pretty much automated at this point, really.
I want to go back and dig into the setting of the appointment and the disposition of that appointment to your sales reps, right? So who gets what? So the sales manager's taking on that role. I hear a lot of contractors that really struggle here, and it's partially because of the freedom aspect of sales reps, right? Like to balancing this, right? Do you have access to their calendar? Do you know when they are available? Do you know when your team is available and when you could get them out there? How have you guys thought about that and managed that?
Most of it has been directly through our CRM. So the way that works in the CRM that we're using, our sales manager, he'll enter as soon as the lead comes in. He's already typing it into the system, contact info, you know, source of where we found that lead. All of that information is getting inputted into our CRM. As soon as he assigns it, the sales rep gets a message on their phone. Just saying, hey, you have a new lead. This is where it is. Here's the contact info. It's moved over to contacted, typically, like I said, within an hour.
Yep.
And then once that client's contacted with, we're already scheduling a site visit.
Who schedules?
So that's kind of that.
So who schedules the site visit? Is the sales manager or the sales rep?
The rep.
Okay. So you're moving it over to them, and you're saying, hey, get this person on your calendar. So you're still letting the rep control their calendar.
Yep.
Right. And allowing them that freedom. How are you kind of ensuring that they're doing that, right? That they're scheduling the site visit, that you're making sure that you're the accountability piece to handing over that lead, because that's revenue for your business, right? You got to make sure that they're doing their job. How are you watching that? How's the sales manager paying attention to that?
Yeah, so leads aren't cheap, and in our CRM system, once contact is made, they can move it to contact or contact attempted. If for whatever reason they can't make contact, at least it's in attempted. They tried. So we're constantly monitoring that. But I think what it really boils down to, Jim, too, is we're hiring sales professionals. We're going out there. We're trying to find the best guys in the industry. If I have to worry about trusting you on a daily basis as to whether or not you're getting back to leads, you know, you're probably not a great fit for our team, because our team are career sales guys, super professional, and they know that call is the way to a bigger paycheck.
Yeah. talk about that then. Let's talk about that, like finding professional salespeople. What are you guys doing around that?
I think what we're doing is we're building a culture. Most of our guys are coming from the same background as me. They're coming from a corporate style background. Maybe they're getting burnt out. They're not seeing the time that they'd want with their family. And when we meet that person during that interview process, I think that really sticks out for us versus maybe some of the other options they're looking at. As far as finding them, some are on LinkedIn. Most of them are personal acquaintances. You wouldn't believe how many people in our area want to come work for us because we're offering these guys a really good package, and we've really continued to build this culture around freedom, fun. We're fun to work with. We always try to make it fun. We have competitions. We try to keep these guys incentivized across the board, all different ways. But I would say primarily a lot of our guys are really from that corporate sales environment, whether they were in a dealership working or if they were in IT sales, constantly knocking doors, selling. So one of our guys used to work for Cintas, so he's constantly knocking doors, selling, clothing and apparel, and just getting that freedom set into their mind and showing them the path to that has really, just kind of people are wanting to jump on board because of that.
So this is an interesting thing because I think that a lot of and it's not a true fact, right? But I think that a lot of big companies, they attract high quality people a lot of times, big corporations, because high quality people want a few things. They want upward mobility. Small businesses don't allow that a lot of times, right? If you're a sales rep for a local roofing company, a lot of times there's not much upward mobility, right? And so I think that that's an attractive thing about of high quality people to some of these corporations, and the professionalism, the security or feeling of security that this is a when you work for John Deere, this is a multi-billion-dollar organization. I mean, these guys aren't going out of business overnight, right? There's so many horror stories in the roofing industry about people not getting paid and tons of that stuff, right? So I think that how do you in that interview process, and I heard some of the things, like what have you found to be the hot buttons for those people? What have you found to be the things that how are you selling them on working for James and Whitney versus versus another corporate job?
Well, I think another thing is a lot of those corporate jobs, you're expected to do so many things under that one hat.
Yeah.
You have to fill out all your own paperwork. You have to not only sell the product, but you have to, babysit it through the entire process. So something that we were able to do is we made it so that you can come in and do pure sales. I want to remove every barrier for our sales team to generate revenue. So the more streamlined I can make it for them, the easier it is to do their job, which, to touch back on that hot button thing, I know as a career salesperson, that's one of the first questions I'm going to ask is, okay, what are my responsibilities in this new role? And if it is, hey, here's a truck, here's a fuel card, go out and sell roofs. And by the way, I'm going to feed you leads. It's pretty appealing to a lot of guys that are maybe dealing with some of those barriers at their current corporate, background or location. So that's been a huge positive that almost everybody that comes on our team is just, man, I love just being able to go out and do my job and sell.
Yeah, there's something there's something to that separation, right? And so there's something to separating it. Now, in that situation, though, the sales rep to me needs to feel comfortable that the company is going to take it over, because they develop that relationship, right? Especially, I mean, you guys are up in Maine. It's a lot of small town. Everybody knows each other's stuff, right? Like, it's not, you're going to run into this person at the grocery store if you're that sales rep, and they're going to, they may have an earful for you if things didn't go well. I guess let's move into the, the production process now, and how have you structured that to support those salespeople?
Yeah, absolutely. So, sales rep hands it to production, which is fielded by our production coordinator. So after we receive everything we need, sign contract, deposit, production coordinator takes it over, schedules the job, reaches out to the client, says, "Hey, you're tentatively scheduled for roughly this time frame," and then starts the assignment process with our production team, our project managers. One of them will get assigned to the job. But throughout this whole thing, right, the sales guy's still out selling. He's still out generating revenue, but he's also always the liaison to that customer, right? So now the customer has a point of contact in their sales rep, in the production coordinator to deal with scheduling, as well as their new assigned project manager. So now that customer feels, in my opinion, even more supported, because you have 3 points of contact there to support you, versus just it getting completely handed off to production. You have 1 point of contact and the sales guy's completely out of the picture. So the other thing we do really well is we educate our clients about our process. Rather than someone just calling up and saying, "Hey, I'm the project manager," out of the blue. "Oh, well, I was dealing with so-and-so." We educate them on our process in the beginning, and it keeps everybody on the same page, because the number one thing that can shoot you in the foot would be lack of communication with the client.
Yeah. That was one of the first things that I thought of, like, you're saying 3 points of contact now. Now now the homeowner has a lot of different ways that could feel comforting in some instances, but I would expect that sometimes they're like, they don't know who to call, so they just start calling people, right? And does that happen? How do you mitigate that?
No, I mean, it doesn't really happen. I mean, if they have a real issue, they'll go back to the sales rep. But I think on average completion right now is from the point the contract is signed to the point their job is completed is on average about a 2-week turnaround. So, in that 2 weeks, the sales rep's taking care of them to the point of the contract being signed. Production coordinator is just getting them from that point to the job going down, and then they have a project manager on site while their project's happening. So, you have 3 points of contact, but it's truly 3 different steps. It's just a kind of a safety net to have those additional, steps in place.
Yeah, for sure. And now you have someone on site. That sounds expensive to a lot of owners.
Yep.
How, speak to that a little bit. What does it do? How have you structured it? And what have the results been?
Yeah. So, when we have a sales team and we have a production team, and, it is expensive to have both. And I think a lot of small roofing companies and contractors, they try to put all those hats. They try to make one person wear a few different hats there. What we found is we're not the lowest price contractor. We don't want to be, right? We're in the business of offering the best experience. In my opinion, the best experience is having that project manager on site, managing that project from front to back, accepting the materials, overseeing the project, quality control. They're physically on the roof, making sure everything's going to plan. afterwards, they're cleaning the site up. They're making sure everybody's happy, so that we can leave that job site with a clean conscience that they got the James and Whitney experience from front to back. We're trying to sell them an experience. And, I think a lot of people really appreciate that because it's tough to find.
Now you say that. Here's what a lot of contractors hear. They need to get that sale. So they're just going to do it, right? Which eats into their margins. And so this is a thing that I think it's very challenging, but has to be done. Is you have to know, like you kind of said early on, it's knowing your numbers, right? You'd mentioned that real early on, like when you guys were getting organized, it's part of getting organized was knowing your numbers. When you think about, can you afford that job site supervisor or whoever's out there, you have to know your numbers. That's the key to it, right? Like you have to, if you won't be able to afford them if you're not building in the proper margins. The other thing I heard from you is, hey, we're not the cheapest in our area. We may not be the most expensive, but we're not the cheapest. So how have you guys settled on, because I mean, when you started with the company, how long had they been in business?
6 years doing construction. So both owners had their own separate companies. Steve Whitney and Eric James, they both had separate construction companies. They merged and then really started to expand the exteriors division in January of 21.
Okay. So when, I mean, they had other businesses, so they knew something, right? They were experienced in some way. But even then, when you're going to market with a new product, a lot of times you just try to take checks. What I mean by that is that you sell to the lowest common denominator, right? Like you're there is not a lot of thought put into what margins you actually need to have a general manager, a sales manager, a production manager, job site supers, sales reps, trucks, gas cards, marketing, all of these things. How have you priced your jobs? Or how do you do that with an intention, with a specific intention of specific margins because of specific costs?
Yeah. So what we do is we know where we need to be on margin to cover our overhead. As everybody knows in this business, it's extremely expensive, especially doing it the way we're doing. And we understand that. So we have basically a minimum pricing that reps are allowed to sell at. And, that's the floor. And we look at each job, on an individual basis. And sometimes, especially if it's a commercial job or something like that, we can dive a little bit lower. Most of the times we're trying to maintain that minimum or slightly higher. And it seems to work really well. But going back to, kind of forecasting, right? Forecasting how you can afford all these things is you have to set yourself a goal. You have to say, are we going to be a $3 or $4 million company, or do we want to scale to this number? For us, a big target for us, it was 12 million. Our first year, I think we did between 2 and 3. Last year we did almost 9. This year we're definitely pacing for 12. And we set that goal, and then we built everything backwards off of that number. You kind of gotta set where you want to be. Okay, how many people can we feed off of that number, and still, not sacrifice on quality, not sacrifice to the point where you're straining your people out because they're working 100 hours a week, right? You need to fill X amount of positions. How do we get there?
Yep.
So we started at that top number and kind of worked backwards.
I think a lot of times business owners, not just roofing contractors, I think a lot of small business owners set goals arbitrarily, right? They say, I want to hit 2 million this year. I want to hit 5 million this year. but there's no real thought working it backwards into what that means specifically from a team perspective. Or, I mean, they may say, oh, I want to make X amount of money and that would be this, right? And that's why my goal is that. But they don't do the math backwards.
Yeah.
In terms of people and number of leads they need per week, per month, number of appointments, number of estimates written, number of jobs started, number of contracts signed, number of jobs started, number of jobs completed, like all of those details along the way are what leads to that big number. How have you guys thought about that big number? Where did you come up with 12?
Well, we want to be the largest roofing company in the state. Obviously, we're realistic as to you're not going to do that in year one.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to do that in year two. But what does that roadmap look like to get you there? We're trending, right? And we're putting in as much time, effort, everything possible to get there. But to answer your question, to come up with that number was, we did a lot of market research. We are aware of our market. We're in Maine. We're not in Central California. We're not in Florida.
Yeah.
We understand where we're at. So we had to do a lot of research into, what are we getting for leads? What do we think is realistic for leads that we could get? What's our average close rate? Based off that close rate, what's our average sales number? How many do we think we could get? And then, that kind of led us slowly to that goal number that we wanted to get to.
And then this is the other question, because again, you guys in Maine is it's not Dallas, it's not Orlando, it's not the DC area where there's just millions and millions of people. So that when you were saying that, I was like, man, 3 million in additional revenue year over year. I mean, how do you do that in those small towns? Do you expand further? Do you go wider or deeper? Like that, maybe that's a good way to think about it. Do you go wider or deeper?
Both. No, but really, what it is I think the only way you can do that is think outside the box. For us, what we did was we really started to implement those technologies to get efficient, but at the same time, it put us 10 to 12 years ahead a lot of our competitors in this area. They're resting on their laurels. They've been in here for 20 plus years. We're out here, trying to use cutting edge technology to get us ahead, to grow faster. We're hungry, right? We're attacking marketing very aggressively. And, again, just kind of being ahead of the curve. I mean, when they get our quote and it's got a picture of their house on it with specific, items that we want to replace or repair to their home, the client's just blown away. They're like,
yeah,
the last guy came here with a written note, So yes, going back to just offering that experience, it's from the moment you put a quote in their hand till we're cleaning up the nails with a magnet,
Yeah. So that's an important thing. Like, I want that to be a light bulb for people, is that it's the experience that's separating you, right? Like a lot of times, even in large markets, like you can have a different experience for people. If you create a better experience, that will separate you. Small things you can do is have more reviews and better reviews than the next company. I know I've had a couple of conversations with contractors now that they decided, hey, you know what? We're pretty close to this major metro area, but we're going to go west here. We're going to go east. We're going to go out into this more rural area. It's less professional. A lot of the contractors in those areas, unfortunately, I mean, they're small town. They've been there forever. Everyone knows them, right? It's like But when that new contractor comes to town that actually has a very professional appearance, very professional experience, boy, those guys have a hard time. And I think I've told this story on the podcast a few times, but I remember years back, I talked to a contractor out in kind of rural Washington state. And there was like 2 or 3 contractors in the area. They'd been around for 10, 20, 30, 50 years, whatever it was. And they all they were the 3, right? They were the 3 in the market.
Yeah.
And they almost to a point agreed on price. Like, hey, we're not going to try to, undercut each other too much. We're not going to go crazy on we're all going to have our place in the market. And one of the big companies came to town. I won't mention the name, but one of the big companies came to town and was selling at twice the cost per square. So they were selling around $450. This company came to town and started selling at $900 a square. So one of the big companies, right? And took market share from them like they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Like, how did this company come to town and they're selling at twice what we're selling at?
Right.
But they had the professional appearance. They had the professional everything, professional customer journey, right? The communication was professional. The look of the trucks, everything, the presentation, what you're talking about, right? Like all of these things, people will choose that. Right? People will choose that.
Yeah.
And the other contractors in your area will either have to keep up or they will get left behind. How has that experience been over the last few years for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, our guys are always super clean cut. We want to show an image, whether it's our truck showing up, the polos, we always wear James and Whitney apparel when we're on site. We want to gain trust from the moment where we get there and we're physically inspecting, right? Our guys are getting on the roof. They're earning trust there because you're showing credibility, but also, if you're going against those small contractors and they're maybe a little bit rougher looking or not quite put together, I look at it like, who do I want to give my money to?
Yeah.
And usually it's the guys that look professional, act the part, are responsive, communications on point. All of those things kind of stand out. And again, gets back to that experience. And that's where we really try to shine, is really our image overall. Yeah. So
how has the response been have you guys heard the from the other contractors in the area? Like, is there some chatter going on? Because with the goals that you guys have and coming from, 0 to 12 million, shooting towards 12 million this year, it's taken a lot of market share up there. Right. That's
Yeah. So Maine, there's only so much depth to be had, but I think we get a lot of, hey, geez, seen your quotes a lot more lately. We've seen a lot more of your signs. We've seen a lot more of your trucks, and it's definitely, I think, shocked people how quickly we've grown.
Yeah.
We had a Super Bowl commercial this year. Those things really stick out to people, and they're like, geez, we hadn't heard about you, but also, you go online, we have, 5-star Google reviews, our website's professional. So when people start looking into us and our company and our brand and our story, I think we build credibility pretty quick. So, I think other contractors, they're probably a little bit nervous, and but at the same time, at the end of the day, I'm not as worried about the contractors. I just want to offer a good service to our client base.
That's right. But it's to me, it's like that's almost a badge of honor when they start chirping, right? Like because then
it's a little fun.
You're making an impact though. But But that's the thing is, and that's where the reputation of the roofing industry has been, not great for a lot of years. And so companies like yours and others around the country that are doing the things, right? Doing the things to professionalize the industry, doing the things to make a great customer experience and to really focus on that and do good work at the same time. It's changing, and it's changing fast.
Yeah.
So, we talked about the other day when we were talking about it's kind of in that growth mode, right? Like when you're going from 2 and the next phase and the next phase and the next phase, a lot of times the challenges are people. Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think every small company, deals with, employee turnover, if you will, people coming, people leaving. I think the most important part of your business is your people and understanding your people. I don't know if you've ever heard of the 5 love languages.
Yeah.
Kind of a simple little thing. Well, I look at employees like the 5 love languages. Everybody is motivated by something a little bit different. Some people it's money, some people it's freedom, some people it's recognition. So to avoid, that turnover, especially with, a good sales team, a great production team, you really got to understand what motivates them as individuals and, play to those points, right? So something I've always found is people perform better when goals are known, feedback is immediate, coaching is continuous, and recognition is meaningful. And in order for that recognition to be meaningful, you really have to understand what is meaningful to that employee or that individual. And once you start realizing, hey, this guy really enjoys his time off. Hey, if you hit this goal, why don't you take Friday off and go golf, or what have you? Everybody's a little different, but just playing to those meaningful aspects to each individual is huge.
That's a great. Everyone's different, right? Like, so knowing what their, what your team needs, who they are, what motivates them, and kind of helping give them what they want, right? That's the culture building to a point, right?
Right.
That's a different thought process too. When you're thinking that intentionally about the people in your business, it's not like they have a job, right? Where they come to work and they just have to do their work and go home, and you're creating a different environment. What other things are you doing to create that kind of corporate culture or team culture?
Well, our team culture is, I think we try to get away from corporate, because I think some of that, that's one of the things we wanted to get away from corporate. Was corporate, you don't feel that individualism. You don't feel that recognition on an individual level. Mm-hmm. It's more about just your performance. But what we're always trying to do is we're always trying to, during the training process, intake some of this person, what they're capable of professionally, but also what is their personal life like, right? What makes them tick, and find some common ground with them. We built this family around this culture, whereas everybody wants to, we have all these big goals and we're trying to build, and there's revenue to be generated, but how do we make that fun? Like, whether we're at, the JLC down in Rhode Island and we're all going and having a beer after the show, or we might go axe throwing, we might go play golf, we do digital golf, or now in Maine, unfortunately, 6 months a year you do have to do digital golf, but we're just now getting out and playing real golf. So it's really become more of a brother and sisterhood, if you will. Everybody in the company, we're really try to make it like a family I know that any of our guys or gals, if I pick up the phone and I need help, they're gonna be there immediately. And I think everybody in the company would say the same thing about me. So we're just trying to build the culture on the team to be more like a family than just, you showing up to cubicle number 4 and waving and saying hi and walking past,
Yeah.
So
for sure. So what other things are you focused on? What are you focused on now? Maybe in the, when we're talking about the customer journey, there's a customer loyalty piece that generates that recurring referral revenue for your business over time. What are you guys focused on that?
Yeah. So, we're starting to get a lot of repeat business in a short amount of time. And it's really just touching that client as many times as we can, not just during the sales process through production, but after the sale as well, right? And sometimes that doesn't mean physically, picking up the phone and calling them, although that's super important. We do have emails. Sometimes it's just, hey, I saw you guys again on TV, or I saw your sign again. It's just that brand recognition. We want to be able to have that client see us over and over and over again because it builds credibility in the brand. We have our sales guys following up with calls. Sales manager follows up with calls. I follow up with calls as well. We have emails that are going out. We're actually gonna start doing surveys pretty soon. So all of those things kind of, again, just add to more touches. And I think the more time you can get out and touch those customers, the more brand recognition you're gaining.
For sure. Are you doing stuff in the community? I mean, that's a lot of small towns. There's probably a lot of little festivals and parades and, all kinds of stuff going on all the time.
Yeah, we sponsor a ton of stuff for kids. We do the Big Brother, Big Sister tournament every year, golf tournament. So we do some golf tournaments. We just recently did a local race. We sponsored that. We donate a lot to the community, just locally. It helps with brand recognition, but at the same time, these are the same people that are building your business. So giving back, it's huge in so many ways. If a sales guy, actually one of our sales reps, his daughter's on a travel basketball team, we threw some sponsorship at that. So it's fun to reach out to those people that supported us and give back and help support them.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think the greatest insight is that you could share with our audience that's kind of helped you guys find success with James and Whitney?
Yeah, the greatest insight I could give, as far as if somebody's looking to grow their business, is do your homework, get organized, learn your numbers, and find good people to help get you there.
Yeah, that's succinct, man. That's it. Awesome. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. If you would like to generate more revenue through your digital marketing efforts, please visit roofermarketers.com to get a copy of the book, The Best Known Roofer. Also, check the training section of the website for guides on everything from running effective pay-per-click ads to how to properly set up your Google My Business listing. Thanks for listening.